I tested 5 niche fragrances in the month of January, and I have thoughts, I have feelings. So I want to share those with you to help you navigate purchasing some of these hard to find samples so that you can make the right decision for yourself. Hi, I'm Jeanique, perfume collector and enthusiast, and today I'm doing a review of 5 niche perfumes that I tested in the month of January. Those niche perfumes are Montale's Intense Cafe, Mancera Jardin Exclusif, and 3 perfumes from Maison Crivelli, including Solaberg, Iris Malakhan, and Datchai. So if that's something you're interested in, stick around. I want you here. You want to be here. Let's do this. Start off with the fragrance that I tried first of the bunch, and that was Montale's Intense Cafe. I started off strong. I was most excited about testing this. I don't even know why I was testing it, because for real, I had already blind bought it because I saw it on sale and it was on my way to my house before I had ever tested the fragrance itself. But I decided to go ahead and test it anyway to see what I'd be getting into. So let's talk about Intense Cafe by Montale. Now, this is a fragrance that has trended on TikTok. Everybody says great things about it. It's an ambery vanilla that is very much a gourmand fragrance that is meant to be a combination of coffee, rose, and vanilla. There's no coffee. Let's just put that out of our mind straight off, rip. It's really a rose and vanilla fragrance, and it's a really pleasant one at that. It is very gourmand, vanilla, cozy, warm, and a really sort of wonderful fall winter fragrance that would do well by a fireside at night, really just relaxing and feeling all bundled up. That is the vibe this fragrance gives. Now, I feel like the term or the name Intense Cafe is a little bit of a mischaracterization because it isn't exactly intense. It is a cozy cafe. It is a lovely cafe. It's even a warm cafe, but it isn't an intense one. I think if they had ratcheted up the coffee and we could really distinguish it in the fragrance, we would be able to call it an intense fragrance, but it's not that. It is a really mild gourmand that really is focused on vanilla and rose coming together to create something incredibly pleasant. Even the musk that is in here is a soft white musk. It isn't an intense musk at all. They have clean amber in here, so not black amber that has some of those smoky and really dark elements. Instead, we have this really clean amber that offers a little bit of base and depth to the fragrance without providing any real intensity. I think this is an entry-level gourmand fragrance for anybody who is interested in gourmands but doesn't want to take it too far. I've seen this fragrance compared to a few on the market. I think it's comparable to milk. Surprisingly though, I would say that it's more lactonic than milk in that it's creamier, it's milkier than milk. I know, the irony. But it's not as sweet as milk. So it reminds me of a vanilla latte where you've pared back the coffee element because you're not much of a coffee drinker. That's what it smells like, and it's really pleasant for that reason. I also would say that it's in the same sort of family as something like Vanilla 28. So if that's something you like or love, then Intense Cafe isn't that much of a stretch. Now, I wouldn't say that this fragrance is mind-blowing, transformative, but I think it's an easy reach fragrance for anybody who loves a warm, cozy vanilla and are looking for something that fits that brief. Now, the bottle is cute. It fits with all of the Montale perfume bottles, and I think if you're collecting Montale bottles and have those stacked up and lined up, it does look really pretty. I think it looks a little bit bougie. I like that about it. The packaging is really nice. As far as the value for money, I purchased mine for a little under $100, but I think it usually sells for between $150 and $250. At that price, it's a little bit over the top, but if you can find it on a discount website for under $100 or even at $100, then I think that is a good price to pay for this one for what you are getting. I think as well, because it isn't anything remarkable, you will get a lot of use out of it because it's really pleasant and it fits a lot of those nighttime indoor activities that you might be getting up to in the winter and fall months. So I am not at all disappointed in my own blind buy of this fragrance. Now I have to keep in mind that because I've already blind bought it and it's on its way to my home, I may be incentivized to love it more than I otherwise would. But just off of the samples that I did try, I really did enjoy them. I really am happy that it's going to be added to my collection. I don't have a ton of Gourmands in my collection, and so adding this one in will be a nice change for me. So this was a successful test for me because it ended with me really enjoying the fragrance and really appreciating the fragrance that's on its way to me. The fragrance I tested was Mancera Jardin Exclusif, which is a fruity floral fragrance that combines pear, peach, black currant with jasmine, black amber, violet, rose with vanilla, sandalwood. All of these come together to create what I'd say is a pretty classic version of a fruity floral fragrance that leans more floral than fruity. So many of the fruits that's in here, whether it's the black currant or the peach, tend to be pretty sweet and juicy, and that's what you get in the opening, this sort of blast of fresh sweet fruit that's really pleasant to smell. In the mid, you have some of those heady white florals, you have that rose that come together to really mature the fragrance, and some of the sort of base elements like the black amber and the sandalwood help to ground the fragrance to make it a little bit more mysterious, a little bit darker, and a little bit more interesting. I would say that it is a really pleasant fragrance. If this is the kind of profile you enjoy, that fruity floral combination that leans more floral, then this is something you might potentially enjoy. Now, we all know what the Montale bottles look like. They're really pretty with that clear glass, and they're pretty consistent across different fragrances. So if this is also something you're collecting, this would look good on any sort of dresser in anybody's home. I would say for the price though, it's a pretty expensive fragrance for what you are getting. I don't know if it's worth what it's selling for. Now, it does have solid performance. When I sprayed this on, it lasted for hours and hours and hours. I think this is the ideal fragrance for someone who has actually tested it, really enjoys it, feels like it connects with them personally, and thinks it's something special. Now, if you're somebody like me who collects a lot of fruity floral fragrances and works my way through a ton of them, is constantly sampling them, this for me was not a serious standout in one direction or another. Maybe if it was a little woodier or a little smokier, or if the white florals were a little bit bolder. Now, in this fragrance, they say it's pretty powdery, and it is. It has some powderiness, but not anything that's super fluffy or anything too over the top. Everything in this fragrance is pretty restrained. And if that's your vibe in terms of wanting a fragrance that's a little bit more restrained, a little bit more laid back, then Jardin Exclusive, I think, meets that brief. But for the price, I really do want something that is a little bit more standout, a little bit bolder, and something a little bit more exclusive. Right there, see what I did? Something a little bit more exclusive than I'm getting with this one. So I think it's a really pleasant fragrance, but for $200, I know I can get two for the price of that one that do pretty much the same thing. So as much as I enjoyed this fragrance, it was a no buy for me personally. I'll continue to test it because the tester isn't empty yet, to see if it changes my mind over time, but I suspect it won't. It's just not special enough for what I am spending. Now, if it costs $70 or $80, I would totally spend that amount of money for this fragrance, but anything above that for me was a no-go. The third fragrance that I tried this month, the last three are from Maison Crivelli, so let's just talk about that. I had not tried any fragrances from Maison Crivelli up until this point. I hadn't been so motivated to go out and test anything, right? And I got it into my head that it was time. It was time to break the seal. It was time to test out some fragrances from this particular house because their reputation is pretty positive, especially when as it relates to performance of their fragrances. So I was curious. The first fragrance I tried from them was a nice introduction. Absolutely a wonderful, wonderful introduction. And it is Iris Malakhan. Now, full disclosure, I love Iris, right? The powderiness, the greenness, the floralness, the soft floralness of Iris is something I fully enjoy. And this fragrance wasn't just your typical Iris fragrance. For me, the word I used at the time was that it was a revelation, meaning it was revelatory in terms of how the fragrance changed and shifted over time on your skin. It was a really nice surprise and it was really unexpected. Now, a lot of times people talk about the blend of a fragrance, how you can't distinguish one note from the next, and how that is a great marker of perfumery. Like, it's a great skill to have. This was not that. The fragrances, the notes, you could pull them out separately as they were on your skin, as it built over time, and it felt like it was building up to a crescendo. And by the time we get to the end and we get to the powdery Iris, it's like, yes, we've gotten here, and it is incredibly exciting. Now, it started off with this blast of white floral. It was sharp, it was green, it was floral, it was very intense. It was, no joke, it was a lot, right? That first spray was just a lot on your skin. And then as it settles in, we get this animalic and smoke. Now, personally, truly, I find animalic and smoke mixed with floral and fruit to be, I don't know, a very sexy combination. And so as that gets ushered in and it gets layered over top of that floral, it feels very mature, it feels very grown, and it feels very elevated. Now, by the time we push out past that animalic and smoke, out of nowhere comes a whole bunch of sweetness, some juiciness, but not round sweetness like you get from things like peach or pears. It was the sort of flat sweetness you sometimes get from berries, and that was a nice surprise because it sort of lightened up a fragrance that was getting super mature and super heavy. And then as it sat on your skin for about an hour, you start getting the iris, that sort of soft floral, that sort of hint of powderiness, all blended together to create this really new, not only fragrance, but experience of a fragrance that I think is really, really special. Now, this was a trip for me. Now, I don't know if what I got from this fragrance was necessarily this smelled the best, but it felt like an education in a beautiful job done, and I felt really privileged to experience this, and it made me want to own this fragrance for the novelty of it. Now, I think I would absolutely enjoy having it in my collection and wearing it, but it isn't the easiest thing to wear. It isn't the easiest thing to wear. It does take a bit of confidence to put this on. I think if you're into niche perfumes and you want something that's a little bit different, the hype over Iris Malakhan is not misplaced. It's not for everybody. It's not a safe blind buy. I think it can be challenging for some, but I think if you're looking for something, if you think of perfumery as an art form, I think this expression of that art form is a beautiful one, and it's definitely something that's been added to my wish list and I hope to add one day. The next fragrance I sampled was another fragrance from Maison, Crivelli, Bois Datchai. I think that's how it's pronounced. I'll have it on the screen. Y'all can tell me if I've mispronounced that. Whoo, no. It was a hard no for me. The moment I sprayed it, it was like a slap in the face. It was so incredibly intense and overwhelming and in your face. And it was this really heavy aromatic fragrance that felt almost claustrophobic, right? It was just right around my head and I couldn't seem to get away from it. It was a no for me. So I looked up the notes on Fragrantica because I wanted to get a sense of what was in this to see what it was that was triggering my like response with this fragrance. And I don't see anything on those notes that I would say I usually dislike. So I'm just going to talk about what I smelled on my skin and what the experience was like for me personally. It smelled like camphor to me, or medicine, but minty eucalyptus like medicine in the most overwhelming way possible. It was so in your face. It was like aggressively in your face. It was a lot. And this camphor smell just, it was a protracted unpleasantness for me personally. It just would not calm down. So a lot of times when you have that really intense opening, you give it a few minutes and things begin to settle. The settling on this was this really dark, fougere, aromatic, overwhelming camphor medicinal smell that smelled like I was gonna be in like a hospital where they were going to be rubbing different creams and gels on my body. Like that was the experience for me. And after wearing it for a few hours, because you know what? I'm no punk. I stayed wearing it even though I did not like it. I did not wash it off. It eventually like gets slightly better to get to this woody note that isn't as intense, but it was still not super pleasant. In the notes, I think maybe it was the combination of like really intense incense with the guac wood. Either way, I was not enjoying this. I will say though, the performance was amazing because as much as I wanted it to disappear after an hour or two, it did not. For 10 hours, it was just right there in my face, not going away. I talk with my hands and it was on my wrists, and I smelled it for hours and hours and hours. So the performance is fantastic on it. The bottle, the packaging looks like your typical Maison Crivelli fragrance, which is a nice, clean looking bottle. For the price, if you like how this smells, if you love that sort of medicinal, strong, woody, I would say this is not a unisex fragrance. They market it as a unisex fragrance. It is absolutely a masculine fragrance. It is not, I don't see what woman wants to wear this. I mean, y'all can correct me if I'm totally wrong on that, but it's definitely more masculine leaning in terms of the fougere and aromatic elements to the fragrance, the type of wood, the combination of incense. It was generally unpleasant for me. I know that in the note structure, it says there are fruits in there. I didn't smell any fruit. I didn't smell any florals. It was just aromatics on aromatics mixed with incense and woods. That's all I was getting personally. So it was a hard no for me. But if you do like how this smells, the performance is phenomenal. It does not die down until you're ready to wash it off. I cannot even imagine what it's like on clothing because it's probably worse / better. So anyway, what Datchai for me was a no-go personally. I don't think I'm the target audience. Like I've said, I do love a fruity floral. I do love an uber ultra feminine fragrance, and that's not what I was getting. No, I usually find spices a little challenging. Most accords, most notes for me are wonderful. I love green notes. I love animalics. I love smoke. I love florals, heady white florals to rose. It doesn't matter. I love most elements and notes and accords in perfumery, except I find spices challenging. So everything from frankincense to myrrh to cardamom to all of them, I find them a little challenging. I can't blind buy fragrances that have those elements in them. I have to smell them first to see how pronounced they are. And in this, the spices are so pronounced that it was just super unpleasant for me, and it was a no-go. But I think for the price, if you like that kind of fragrance, for what you're getting, the performance, I think you're getting a good deal there. As far as what it's comparable to, I don't even know. There's this Lacoste perfume, I think it's like L1212 or something like that, that I similarly want to fight every time I smell it. Maybe that's similar. I would say Black Orchid from Tom Ford, which I also can't stand. I'm just like, full disclosure. Maybe similarly, like that is this like a similar kind of vibe. I can't tell the difference. I just know I don't like them. So yeah, Bois Datchai was a complete failure of a test for me personally, but at least I can mark off one potential wish list perfume because it's just so not up my alley. Finally, the last fragrance I tried from Maison Crivelli was Solaberg. Just full disclosure, I went and bought it. Yes, it's tiny. It's a tiny baby bottle. But I tested it, smelled it, fell in love, and was like, it's like I made it myself. Like if I was in a studio somewhere pulling together a fragrance, this is what I would make. This is the perfect fragrance for me personally, but it is not a safe blind buy. So let's talk about why that is. In the opening, you have Quince and Bergamot, two of the best opening fruit notes. Like objectively speaking, I love Quince, I love Bergamot, especially together. You get that sweetness, you get that tartness, and I love the combination because it's this fresh, bright sweetness that I really love. So many of the fruit openings can be this really imposing sweetness. That's not what you get here. You get this bright, fresh, open sweetness that I just adore. You have dried fruits in it, which is also like this uber sweetness. I think part of the issue that people have with this fragrance is that the audience for some of the notes don't usually overlap. So on the one hand, you have lily, and you have Quince and Bergamot and all of these really classic fruity florals that might attract someone looking for a more feminine, girly, flirty fragrance. On the flip side, you have these really pronounced green notes from the mate tea and this very green patchouli. You also have a lot of amber, you have laudanum, you have ambroxan, you have a lot of like grounding, rounding fragrance notes in here. You also have tobacco and animalic in here. So I find that usually if you're looking for something that has like a lot of animalic and a lot of smoke and a lot of green notes, you're not necessarily looking for an uber sweet fruity floral as well. And the audiences don't tend to overlap, except they do in this bottle. And it's phenomenal as somebody, like I've said before, who loves most notes and most accords and can't usually find them all together in a fragrance without the spices like the cinnamon and the nutmeg and the cardamom and all of those things. We don't have the spices, but we have everything else. And I'm just chuffed about it. I am so happy this fragrance exists, to the point where I didn't even get off my phone. I just went to purchasing as soon as I tested. Like I tested it and I got to buying immediately. I didn't even need to think about it. It brings this really sexy energy that I think few fragrances capture. This is confident sexuality, right? This is a unapologetic sexuality. This is own sexuality that feels really mature, really purposeful, and really confident. And it makes me want to cry how much I love this one. So as far as the fragrances I tested in the month of January, this was absolutely one of the most successful that I've ever experienced, where I sprayed something on and it just felt like me. It wasn't just pretty, it wasn't just interesting, or it didn't just smell good. It smelled like something that I would create myself for myself, and I was just excited to come across it. And it sold me on Maison Crivelli, despite Datchai. It sold me on the brand because it just shows me that they're taking chances, they're pulling things together that don't usually go together, that people don't necessarily want together based on the ratings and the reviews of this one, because it is so confusing. It's not for everybody, but if it sounds like it's something for you, then go ahead, sis. Now, in terms of pricing, I paid $144 for about 30 mils. Like, that is expensive as far as fragrances go, and it was not available on discount websites. You had to go to some of the sources to get it, and I was really more than happy to do that given how much I love it. Like, my love for this one is twice, 3 times what I would pay for like 2 or 3 other fragrances to add up to this amount of money, how much I enjoy this. So this was a wonderful buy for me, and something I'm looking forward to adding into my February fragrances, because it is the month of romance and sexiness, and I want to give that vixen energy, that villain vixen energy that Lee Solaberg really gives, and I'm really excited about it. I don't think there's any comparison to this. Like, I don't think there's anything on the market that I've smelled that I think rivals it in my mind. I think it stands apart. Like, I think most of their fragrances do. They really do stand apart in terms of what they give and what they offer, and it's either your vibe or it's really, really not. And for the ones that I tried that were not my vibe, I absolutely hated them. But the ones that I tried that that were more in line with something I would enjoy, I was head over heels. There was just no in between for this brand for me, and that is always exciting to see. So that's it, that's all. Thanks so much for stopping by and watching my review of these 5 niche fragrances that I was more than excited to try in the month of January. I hope it's been helpful, I hope it's been illuminating, and I hope you come back for more. So don't forget to subscribe, hit the notification bell button, and come back to see me more often because I got more content coming. I want you here. You want to be here. You know what it is. Good. So good.